You didn't even obliterate my argument. In fact, you somewhat agreed with it a tiny
No, all I
little
did was
tiny
answer a
bit.
question.
Okay. Well,
So, so there might be some, but that doesn't mean that there's more than there is against any other race. It doesn't mean that there's less or more than there are against whites. It doesn't mean that there's less or more than there are against this or that. All I did was say, sure.
but I said it
can
in the
grant
context
that.
of Reconstruction
And?
after slavery. I don't
And
think that
there
it
could still
was
be overall
other-
systems, but there could be other factors which lead to other races being more racially profiled, perhaps.
Do you think
or
that
more
any other
systems
race has
against them.
experienced a worse, not cleavage, but historical acts than Black Americans in America?
Yeah.
Native Americans had a pretty
Yeah.
awful time.
Yeah, they did. And I'd say
Yeah, they
that
did.
they're, yeah, but besides that, can't you say that definitively then they, in society, experience a general level of inequality that is
Mm-hmm. Not right
higher than
now.
a white
That's a
person?
different argument, asking it then and now.
Well, I asked you if you thought Reconstruction was perfect, and
Yeah, but when you said perfect, all you did was say that you would admit that there could possibly be inequalities even now, and I would say, sure, there could be.
is there equalities even now?
I don't know. Just name one.
Planned Parenthood targeting Black communities.
That would not be an inequality that's done from the government level. That would be an institutional progressive lobbying group
Redlining?
that's doing that. Yeah, well, it would be a progressive lobbying group that's doing that. It's not, the government's not forcing blacks to have abortions.
Okay, but we elected the
Okay,
government.
so
You elected who? You elected people who
So
forced
the
blacks to have
question
abortions,
is the institutions
Yes,
in the
unfortunately.
government actually targeting specific races? Is that the question?
I think in that particular case, she's asking yes. If Planned Parenthood itself, well, that was her
Or
argument.
any
Yeah.
institution within the United States is targeting specific races of people?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the answer is yes. That definitely does happen. That happens with black people. It happens with now racism. Like I said, racism.
That's what I
and
just said.
sexism
It
can
happens.
happen
It
with-
happens to all sorts of different races. I'm not willing to concede immediately that it happens more to one group than another. That's why I asked for specifics.
Well, I was about to give a specific. I was about to tell you a specific. I'm not, like I said, racism can happen to anybody. But for example, human trafficking, for example, if I think I was doing an interview with someone running for Congress, and they said where 4 children will go missing of brown, white, black background, at least 5,000 indigenous women and children will go missing. And DHS is involved in this, family courts are involved in this, immigration is involved in this, like a bunch of different agencies from the government are actually involved in trafficking minority children. So there is...
We gotta steer clear on this.
Okay, well, there's a lot of... my point is there is a lot of government agencies that do target minorities. White people can get racism as well, but there is government agencies involved in a lot of stuff.
Do you think they target white people by kind of shutting down any argument by basically saying you can't even have a say in this, you're white?
I mean,
Isn't that
I've
kind of shutting down?
I've heard
Well,
people do that.
I mean, you're kind of like scoffing, but
Yeah,
if
you're
you
the
can't,
my
Not
body,
in the
my
government.
choice.
In this conversation, yeah, probably, but
no,
not
but
in the
what I'm
government.
saying is if you're basically negating somebody's perspective purely based on their race and they can't even have a perspective on it, isn't that kind of racist?
I never said anyone.
Nobody
you-
ever
what
said
do you
anyone
mean,
was
not in the
negating
government?
anyone's perspective.
Wait, like, were you not here for all the riots that happened, where the government inside these major metropolitan areas literally cleared their police forces out so that people could riot, loot, destroy, take over whole city blocks, things like that? Pretty fucking institutional, I must say.
But that's not actively discriminating against white
that's
people.
pretty actively
Dick Kennedy
discriminating
donated
against a certain group,
$200.
against by
WHO owned the
emboldening another
slaves,
group to
traced
go and
my
commit
family
violence against
hundreds
them.
of years. We're Irish. We were slaves. Do we have records of who profited/owned slaves in US? Why are all, and only, white people held responsible?
Well, also, when you look at the slave trade too, we're also some of the first to end it. So, and we're always held responsible for that as well.
Well, I also think it's interesting that the generalization to say, we hear a lot of times leftists blaming all white people for this, that, and the other. And the reality is many people, even that live in the United States that are white, their family immigrated here much later than slavery, right? So how would you hold them responsible for things that happen?
I don't think we have to
You know
hold
what I
them
mean?
responsible at all.
They're
And I
just
don't think
benefiting from the
no,
institutional
no, no, no,
And
no.
how do we
no, and I don't
figure out
disagree. And I don't, and I
know?
don't I mean, what's it called? And I don't immediately disagree with white people just on the basis that they're white. I don't think that either of those are.
No, I don't think you necessarily. I was just like extrapolating something that happens more generally. So it's basically like, oh, you can't have an opinion because you weren't impacted by it. And that kind of happens with men on certain topics, like you don't have a uterus, shut up. Or you weren't involved, you weren't a slave, so you don't know what it's like to be affected by racism. As if people who aren't that exact thing, then they can't have an opinion. I think that's what I was talking about. I wasn't saying specifically you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I think it's pretty common for. I see what you mean from some communities. Definitely, probably like shutting down white people's opinions, but I don't know. I don't think it's gotten to like a systematic level yet where they're like afraid to express them in public. I guess
know a
maybe
lot of
they
people are kind of afraid to express things.
They get depersoned if they express the wrong opinion. What do you
Yeah.
mean? They get thrown off of all media. They get completely, they get debanked. They get, I would say that there's a pretty institutional drive at this point that's pretty hard to ignore.
I think that's heavier against Christians, though. I think Christians are
I
some
agree
of the
with that,
most
too.
persecuted
So you
people on
think
the
agree with
planet.
that.
you think it's wrong to shut down and oppress other people's opinions?
No, I'm making a point, a specific point
Ironic.
about institutional
Because he doesn't
power.
think I should have an opinion on who's president.
Oh my God! Don't
Which
you
we all know it's going to be
understand?
Trump. I'm going to be
Like,
voting for Trump.
I don't understand why it's hard for you to make a disassociation
Trump
between
2024.
arguments.
Everybody vote for Trump.
So if you're making a dissociation with an argument, I can hold an argument in my mind
can hold
without
contradictions in your
conceding
mind.
that it's true. I can argue a thing without ceding it's true or false. I can run an internal critique without ever ceding it's true or false. Making the argument that you're wrong is not making the argument that I hold that value. I don't know why you have had a hard time with that all night. There's no performative contradictions to anything that I've said. Me saying that there can be, by her definition, institutional authorities which discriminate against people in no way, shape, or form negates me saying that limiting women's suffrage would be good for society.
That's not what you were talking about just now. You were talking
Yes,
about
it is.
racism. No, you were talking about racism, and you're
I'm
talking
running
about
an
how
internal
it,
critique.
Okay, you weren't even talking about. You're talking about racism and how you think that isn't it wrong to basically shut down white people, for example, having a say in
That's
a
an
matter that they aren't.
internal
Right?
critique. It's an internal critique. It's not me giving any actual here's my opinion, here's what I think on it. It's literally just running
I
a
agree that it's
criticism
wrong
on
to,
her argument.
I think it's wrong. Everyone should have a say in these things and be able to speak on these things. No one should be trying to, say you can't say certain words because we all have freedom of speech, which is in the Constitution, which you don't believe in. But I know, most Americans do believe in that.
The right to free speech. Okay, great. That's a great segue. So you think that there's a right to free speech? Really? You really think that?
We have the Constitution, which has the First
The piece
Amendment,
of paper.
which refrains our government from interfering and infringing on our right to free speech.
Yeah. Are they doing that with Mr. Jones right now, do you think? Or do you think that they're impeding his free speech, his rights?
Alex Jones?
Mm-hmm. Would you say that the government's impeding his free speech?
I would say, you'd have to define what.
The First Amendment.
No. I hear what you're saying. You're talking about a civil lawsuit that happened, right? Which I believe the accusation was it slander or defamation, right? His speech, nobody's came and put a muzzle over his mouth. Like, he technically can say whatever he wants at this point in time. But the thing is if I went out there and I said something about something not true about the whatever podcast say, I could be liable for that, right? So I can't actually go. So I'm not saying whether what he said was true or not. I'm not making an argument in that the state.
Well,
but
what I'm
what
saying
you're
is that
saying
is it an inherent right? Meaning,
Alex
is this
Jones has
something?
First
Is this
Amendment
something?
rights.
Is this
Absolutely.
something which can be taken from you arbitrarily for no reason
No,
given? The
your
answer is
speech-
yes.
Your First Amendment, you have a First Amendment right.
Let's say, okay, so let me try to phrase it the best way I can. Let's assume another country came in and just butchered all of our menfolk. They just gunned them all down. with machine guns and left all the women folk and said, none of you bitches got free speech anymore. That's what they said. They're like, none of you bitches, no more free speech ever. Do you have it or not?
No.
No. The right does not exist
You would
absent
have-
enforcement. No right exists absent enforcement. That's the point of my argument.